Hi, it's Paula from Pola Quilting. Welcome to my channel. In today's tutorial we will cover three subjects. One is how to use non-quilting fabric to make quilted projects. Two, how to design an item when your fabric is very limited. Three, how to make an envelope type of bag for your cushion covers. Corduroy is not necessarily the fabric you would pick when you're thinking about making a quilted item. It is, however, very effective material to work with. The structure of the fabric is adding additional dimension. I only had a few pieces of this material in my scrap box. I had to be very creative to design it in the way to make two cushion covers. Technique shown in this tutorial is great when you have a limited number of pieces you can work with. For example, if you're working with a memory quilt and you only received few garments to produce something. Using magic numbers principle in this type of the project is great. It allows for puzzle piecing, but you know that everything at the end will fit together. There is, however, one thing you need to remember about this type of fabric. Everything will stick to it. So if you're planning to give it to somebody who's got pets, or you have your own pets and you want to keep it, you probably want to get a lint roller. So in the last visit to the scrap store, in one of the piles of bags I purchased were those pieces of the colorful corduroy, and I think it will make nice something. I do not know yet what it's going to be. I think it would make a really nice quilt as well. I just don't know if I would have enough for full size, well, not full size, baby quilt size quilt. So for start, I will go through all of that pile and I will cut everything I can to either the size which will be divided by 2. So basically 2.5 by 2.5, 2.5 by 4.5, 4.5 by 4.5, 2.5 by 6.5. You kind of get the drift now. And then I can design a quilt once I know how many pieces I've got of each of the colors. I can see some of the strips are quite narrow, so if I put a strip which is 1.5 with another strip which is 1.5, that will give me 2.5 strip ready-made as well. So I might need to use that method as well in that project. So yeah, let me iron all of those pieces and I can start cutting out the bigger pieces out of it. I have worked with all of my corduroy scraps and I've managed to cut some 6.5-inch squares. I even found like a nice owl piece of fabric, so I will probably use that one as the centers of my project. Then I've got 4.5-inch squares. Again, I managed to cut 2 of those owl ones, and then I've got other colors. Then I've got 2.5 by 4.5 strips. I've got some 6.5 in length and few in 8.5. Now I also had some strips which were too narrow to cut to 2.5, so I cut them to 1.5 and put them together to create another 2.5 by whatever length piece. So I have used up all of the scraps, so you can even see I cut some of them 1.5 to 1.5 and then kind of join them together with bigger piece to make it 2.5 squares. So I hopefully will be able to use them all in this project. So plan is to create 2 cushion covers. I don't think there's enough for a quilt here, so I'm not going to even go there. So 2 cushion covers which are going to be 20 by 20 inches square. So I'm using my graph paper you can download from my Facebook page group to kind of create a design. Because you know you've got all of those various strips and now you need to kind of put it together like a puzzle. So like I've mentioned, I want my owls to be a centerpiece of the design. So basically what I will do, so this one is 6.5-inch square and I would like to have it somewhere in the middle, not necessarily bang in the middle, but somewhere in the center. So that will be my 6.5 inch square. So each of that square is 2 inches done. So obviously I can map it out where I want those pieces to go around to match together. So then I can put this piece at the top, which is 2.5 by 6.5. Then I could use maybe one 8.5 strip here. And this is how I'm going to build that design. I will be just picking a piece which will fit, or few pieces which will fit, until I fill in all of that place, and then I can start stitching it together. So as you can see, this is how it's progressing, and I'll be carrying on adding, you know, I'll start using maybe some smaller squares in a minute. So because I don't have a lot of space here, so I'll move my design to the design board. It will be easier to carry on there. But basically I'm just making sure I'm using my graph paper to mark all the pieces I'm adding in, so I don't have too many or too little pieces somewhere, because when you're cutting them, obviously there's a little bit of difference, because this is 6.5, this is 2.5 wide at the moment, so it takes more space than this 8.5 piece, which is still to do. But if I sew those two together, obviously that will be my 8.5. So those pieces are not kind of easy to put together where they're kind of matching exactly because of that. So sometimes you might be confused, oh, which piece size I need to put somewhere. So if you're tracking it with graph paper, you will be fine. So you see how I've managed to kind of sort it out on the design board, and I was obviously crossing them as I was going along. So this is one cushion cover to be, this is second cushion cover to be, and I've tried to place those owls kind of more in the center than anywhere else. So now with the sewing, it might look very complicated, but actually isn't. But there might be one or two places where you need to be creative about the sewing, so you might need to stitch something, leave it open on the end and come back to it. But most of it, like, have a look at it, and like this, all of this row I can sew with no problem. This all row I can sew no problem. Now here I will be looking at this section, so I will sew those two together first, then I can sew this together, then I can add this, then I can add that. This can go together, and then sew this together as well. Similar thing, those two together, those two together, those two together, and then I've got whole row, I can add it to the top one. And this is how can you kind of have to go and look at it. Just look at the smaller pieces first, how you need to sew it to make it, you know, kind of the easiest way of doing it together. I've been carrying from the top on both of my cushions, and you know, I've mentioned that there will be some points, or I thought that I will not have a point where they will be tricky to sew them together. Well, I did get to that point. So as you can see here, I've got something I could easily sew here and something I can easily sew here, but here I've got different length to kind of worry about, and then this bottom comes and needs to link with that one. So it is a little bit tricky here. So what I will do, I will pop all of those pieces here to my, well, I've got additional cutting board, but you can use anything really, piece of cardboard. So pop it here, take it to the machine, and I will work from bottom up to make it right. I mean, these ones here are not sewn together yet, but those are, you know, those are easy. Those two together, and then the big piece here. So that's easy bit. So as far as I can work out that section, I can quickly link them later. Similarly here, I will kind of need to work out from the bottom up how to link all of those pieces together. So I will show you again when we get there. So let me pop them on my tray and take you to the sewing machine. Okay, so now I need to work out how to kind of what order I need to arrange for it to kind of fit in together. And I was chain piecing where I could before, but here I will be a little bit slower just to make sure I don't miss something. Okay, so I think where I can start from is from this section up to here. This all can be sewn in, and then this can be sewn together with no issues. So let me start from there. Okay, so for me to be able to link this to that one, I need to have the square sewn in here, and for me to kind of have this square with the rest of this, I need to have this and this sewn here. So what I will do, I will sew this one first to here, but I will only sew like half of that length. Okay. So this is, you see, open still, but now I can link those two together, and that's the full length on this one. Okay, so now I can sew those two together. Again, I can sew full length here. Okay, let's see where we are. Okay, so I'm here. Now I can sew this edge together from top to bottom. So you see, that's why I left here open, so I can do it with no problem. Let's see back here where we are. So now I would like to sew those two together, because then I can finish off all that length, and then the last bit will stay there. Easy sewing for the rest. So almost there. And here we go, the whole bottom piece is now done. I will just iron it and I can link it with the rest. And I will work on the second cushion exactly the same way. So I will bring it to my sewing table and try to work out how to link it with the least amount of, you know, those partial seams. But as you can see, it wasn't very complicated. You just need to remember not to, like here, not to sew to the end. Leave that flap open here so you can attach other elements where needed. Ta-da! Now, Corduroy likes to have things stick to it. He likes to gather the rubbish. And those were scraps I literally pulled out from the scrap bag from a scrap store. So it obviously will need to be washed after I finish quilting and making a pillow. But I like to use lint roller to gather bigger pieces. You can see straight away it looks much better. Now I can iron it out, paste it with some scraps of the batting, and then put the back on it, and the cushions will be ready. Here you've got my two puzzle patched cushion fronts. Just quickly about when would you like to use this technique. First, if you have a leftovers of the fabric you really like, and you don't have enough to cut bigger pieces out of it to make it more standard, this is the method you can use. So you start from the biggest possible shapes and you're going down from every scrap you have out of it. I use this method on a number of occasions when making memory quilts, especially from the t-shirts, because I maybe received few of those only, or other garments, not necessarily t-shirts, and I was just going with that process. So I cut the biggest shapes, like 12.5-inch square, and then I was cutting out smaller and smaller pieces as the fabric was allowing me for that, and I could patch it up together to a size of the quilt. I will have a tutorial about everything about quilt making from the t-shirt, so I will probably touch on that more, but that's the method I've used as well. It may be a little bit more time consuming because you kind of have to watch out on those tricky parts, but if you're making a bigger project than just a cushion cover, then break down your surface into smaller bits. So you basically, for example, if I was making a baby quilt, which would have been 40 by 40 inches, I would have broken it down by 4. So each of those squares you're looking at now, of the 20 by 20 inch for cushion, would have been one section of that quilt. So I would have been working on one section, and then once I've got all of them, I would have just sew them together for 40 by 40 quilt. So just break it down into smaller pieces, which are more workable for you. But that will also depend what look you are after. If you like a little bit more patchy like those cushion covers, then obviously you go with the smaller squares or smaller shapes. Right, so now I will patch some batting. I've got some scraps to put together. Again, I will link it in the description below how to do it. I will quilt very easily those cushion covers. I'm not going to go anything fancy on that. Just some straight stitching I think will do fine. And I will show you how to do the back of it, and then we'll have a finished project. Before I cut into the fabric, let's do some calculations about how we can go about the envelope type of the cushion cover. So first of all, when you're doing your front of the cushion cover, make it at least 1 inch smaller than you think you need. When you do a cushion cover for 20-inch insert, cut your front 19 inches, and then when you sew around, that will take another probably about half an inch. That will make your insert fit in nicely, make the pillow plump, especially if your pillows are maybe not the newest one. So how to calculate how much fabric cut anywhere, and that's especially if you're working with some sort of scraps or you're recycling perhaps curtains. Curtains are very good fabric to use for the backing. Or any other maybe a little bit more sturdy fabric. You can use that calculation sheet to guide you how much cut and where. I will post it on my Facebook group page, so you can download from there. So basically you do need 2 pieces, and those 2 pieces are going to be equal to half of your required cushion cover. So if for example your cushion cover is 19 inches because you obviously cut it a little bit smaller, then you would need have 9.5. Then to that you would like to add another piece of fabric, and that fabric is going to be 5 inches, and that's for the overlap. And then depending again what you're working with, If you're recycling a curtain, one of those edges might be already hemmed, then you don't need to add anything else. Those are the two pieces you need to cut and job done, because that hemmed side will go here, and job done. If you're working with raw fabric, then what you would like to add is another inch to fold and another inch to hide the raw edge. So that's 1 inch here and 1 inch here. So that gives us 9.5, 14.5, 15, 16.5 in total. And that you need two pieces like that to complete the pillowcase. Again, I'm splitting it here because you may have a piece of fabric which's got edge which is not raw, but you don't necessarily like you know, that look of it. You know, sometimes there are prints on the edge of the fabric, things like that, so you like to hide it. So that's why you can add a 1 inch just for that fold. But if your fabric is literally, you just cut it so it's raw edge, you need another inch. So for example, this is my piece of the fabric, which is 9.5, 5 inches, and then I'm looking at this edge. So if the edge is nice, then obviously you don't need to have those two dimensions as mentioned. If the edge is okay but you don't want it to be visible, you fold 1 inch under, so that's that dimension here. If your edge is totally raw and it will, you know, fray if you don't do something about it, you turn 1 inch and you turn another inch, you iron it out and you stitch here to create that nice edge, and that's why you have that third dimension here. Now keep in mind again that if you're working with the scraps, I've put here that you need two pieces which are going to be basically the same. However, they don't have to. As far as that portion and that portion added together equals to your cushion size, you'll be fine. So that means you can have maybe 4 inches here for the cushion cover, and then the rest of those dimensions we've mentioned here. Then on the other side, if you were doing 19 inches square, you would need 15 inches for the main body, and then the rest of the dimension here, and that will give you again a required amount of fabric to create a nice envelope style cushion cover. They don't have to overlap basically in the middle. I have managed to find in my recent journey to scrap store a curtain. There's just one. Usually they're coming in pairs, but I just got one. It only cost me £1, so I think it was a good save. So I will be using that curtain to do my backings. And because the curtains, you know, when they're coming in, this edge, and usually this edge is quite nice, and you can use those finished edges for your cushion cover. That means the only thing I need to do is cut my halves if I want to like bang in the middle, plus the 5 inches overlap. I don't have to worry about those two dimensions because my edge is already finished. So if you have noticed, I first took my curtain, I lay it flat, the edge which was finished off was at the top here, and I cut my two 20 or 19 inches pieces. Then I turned those around so my all finished edges are now on one side, and I cut 14.5. Now you don't have to be like super precise. If you miss, you know, a few millimeters is fine. It still will work, so don't worry about that, but more or less that's where you want to be. Those are my front, so you want to have them right side up, and then we'll be adding those two pieces right side to the cushion cover. So right side down. So that's one half, and then the other half. I will now pin all around to keep that from shifting. You can use either clips or you can use pins. This is, you know, either way is fine. And just to keep it in place. And when you're pinning, just pin a little bit lower so they are not on the way of your stitching, so you don't have to take them out while you're doing that. Just a small tip. And I've got on my machine like reinforced straight stitch, which is like, it kind of makes triple stitch in one go. And this is what I normally use for the cushion covers or bags, because I don't want any seams to, you know, go loose in any point of time, so I use that. If you don't have that, just narrow down the straight stitch, maybe to 1/5 or 1/8. That will kind of reinforce it as well. Or you can go twice around, that's another option. Okay, so I will, like I said, go around, stitch about 1/2 inch from the edge, and then also I will go around and do the zigzag all the edges so there's nothing fraying. But before we do that, there's one small thing to do, and I will show you when I stitch all around that one. I've stitched the pillow all around. There's no, you know, leaving any openings or anything like this, because we will turn it around in the middle. So now I will go around and make sure I will zigzag all the edges to make sure it doesn't fray. This type of fabric, you know, usually likes to fray, so just make sure you secure the edges. But what you want to do to make sure that it's looking nice when you turn it around is to snip the corners. It doesn't have to go to the very edge of that, you know, the seam. You leave here about 1/4 of inch, but when you snip those, or even you can go as far as even snip a little bit on this side as well, it will help to that cushion to kind of have a nice corners when you turn it around. Now I can just with use of normal zigzag go around it, quite tight zigzag so nothing kind of falls out from it. Go around, finish off the edge, and our cushion covers are going to be ready. Here they are, two very cheerful cushion covers which are going to be donated to Southampton City Fund, which is our local charity. That's where the bags I made before went to. I quilted them just with decorative zigzag stitch in like a wiggle pattern, very quick to do. The curtain I used for the back is very nice, so you could you know, actually use both sides to decorate a space. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you got inspired to check your own scrapbox for non-quilted fabric. Or perhaps you had some fabrics you really liked but they were just not enough to be used. As I will be working with magic numbers designs for some time in the future, I've created a separate playlist, so all of those designs will be ready for you in one place. A cheat sheet how to calculate a back of your pillowcase is going to be available on my Facebook group page, Pola Quilting with Friends. You can download from there for free. As usual, check description for links to other mentioned tutorials and resources. Thank you for watching and see you next time.